So we have our portrait of Meeko all roughed in, and I've applied the first layer of ink. So you can see it looks very different now. The thing with the ink is you want it to be quite a bit darker and brighter than what you actually will need, because you're going to be scratching over top of it again. So especially like this area in here is fairly white on the actual reference photo. Similar with these areas here where there's quite a bit of highlight in the reference photo. But we're going to be scratching over them a few more times still, so we're going to scratch them off, like re-scratch those areas, and then we'll reapply ink again. And I like to work kind of from dark to light when I'm adding my inks. So I've added in the darker tones that I see in the reference photo. I'll re-scratch, then I'll add in, you know, kind of the mid-tones, re-scratch, and then I'll go over and add in the lighter tones at the end, and then just add some highlights on top. So we'll start in probably up in here. And you can see as I'm scratching that the area is getting lighter, but it's still holding the color. For ink, I use ampersand ink, which is made specifically for scratchboard. And I also use Derwent Inktense pencils. The ampersand ink is really nice as when you apply it over black areas, it doesn't leave a residue on that area, whereas normal watercolor pencils, or even the Inktense pencils to some extent, will leave a little bit of residue over top of the black. In certain areas that's not a huge deal, but in areas where you actually want it to stay a true black, that can make a big difference. So I've re-scratched the whole thing after the first layer of ink. Now I'm going to go in and start adding more ink in certain areas. So I'm going to start with the eyes, and I'm going to go over with a different blue than what I used the first time. I'm just going to be very careful not to get it anywhere I don't want this blue. And for this I'm using an Inktense pencil, so I use a wet brush and then I go directly off the pencil as opposed to actually drawing on the board with the pencil and then re-wetting it, because I find sometimes you get too much ink in an area. While this area is still wet, there's some green tones in these eyes, so I'm actually going to do a little bit of green just around the pupil while it's still wet, because it will kind of feather itself out. And most of that green will be scratched off anyways, but it'll still be able to see it through there. All right, and then we're going to go back over certain areas with a deep indigo blue. Again, this is a Inktense pencil. So I'm referring to my reference photo to see which areas need which colors. Some areas, when you go over them a couple times adding ink and scratching it off, they become a lot lighter than you wanted them to be originally. And those areas I will go back over and add in some black to darken things up again.